No, yeah.
So Laura, you ready?
Yes,
Okay, I think we have a quorum, right?
1, 2, yes, we do.
Okay. Very good, so let's start.
I don't see everybody.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Borough of Englewood Cliffs Mayor and Council. Today is March 9th, 2022. It's approximately 7 p.m. I call the meeting to order. The meeting is being conducted this evening via the Zoom application, so it's a virtual meeting. Everyone at the public will have an opportunity to be heard as well later on in our agenda. Madam Clerk, may I please have the statement of compliance?
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Law, PL 1975, Chapter 231, setting forth the time, date, and place and purpose of this public meeting through a legal notice published in the record, posted on the Borough website and on the bulletin board.
Okay, thank you. Have a roll call, please.
Mayor Kranjak,
Here.
Council President Katrubis,
Here.
Councilmember Farrow,
Yeah.
Councilmember Park, Councilmember Di Gregorio,
Here,
Councilmember Luciano,
I'm present.
Attorney Mensch,
Here.
and Administrator Thompson Chin.
Here,
Okay, thank you. Will everybody please rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just want to have a brief moment of silence in respect to the victims of the Russian invasion of the Ukraine and other victims of tyranny around the world. I always have mentioned over the last 6 years as mayor that we are very fortunate and we are very blessed to live in Englewood Cliffs and in the United States of America. And we should always remember that and remember those who are in other places that are being victimized by others. So just a moment of silence for them, please. Okay, thank you. Just by way of update, we had one positive COVID case in the last 7 days, and last week we had 2. So we're doing really well now, and as others are as well. I traveled to Switzerland last week, and it's pretty much over there. You couldn't even find a COVID test to return to the United States. It was difficult because we still require that. So thankfully, it looks like the pandemic is over. I think I've said that once before. I hope I don't have to say it again. And we've had a total of 673 cases historically of COVID-19 infections in the town. And sadly, we had 9 deaths, and our thoughts and prayers go out to those families and will continue to do so. Everybody would have received their department reports, and if you have any questions, the borough administrator is on, and I understand the borough administrator is on, so I really would like her to give the council and the public an update on the phone situation, because I get calls from very irate residents every day about their inability to contact people at Borough Hall. So Ms. Thompson Chin, would you please give us an update?
certainly. Well, this afternoon, I provided the council with a detailed update. Essentially, what we're dealing with is a coordination issue between Verizon and its main partner, who's responsible for the actual installation. We knew it was going to occur over a period of 1.5 weeks, but we were anticipating that this past Monday, the police system would be put online, which would allow the rest of the borough to become active. Unfortunately, a major piece of recording equipment that is required for the police department system did not arrive on time. We were advised that the equipment is now available. They are looking to install it on Friday. And the last thing that we're waiting for is the Verizon to give us a new porting date. By porting, we mean actually transferring all of the phone numbers in total from the old system to the new system. We're fortunate in that the police department's portion of the old system was still operational, which is why the police department phones have not gone down. Portions of the borough's phones are still down because the only ones that are currently operating are the ones that are on the new system. And what we're waiting for is for everything to be moved over. So it has been frustrating. Verizon did apologize for, I guess, the extended time that this has taken, but we're nearing completion. And as bad as it is, we do have an improved situation of what we were experiencing in for most of January and early February. So at least internally, we're able to communicate better, but we do understand that it's still problematic for many members of the public.
Okay, thank you. I also had attended the Board of Health meeting on Monday. I swore in Dr. Aaron Capuano. And I thanked the Board of Health at their meeting publicly for their time and their great work in steering us through the pandemic. And right now, I'd also like to appoint Elias Fontakidis as the mayor's designee to the planning board. So I believe there's a meeting tomorrow and I'll be sworn in, and I thank him and all the members of the planning board and all our volunteers for all their help and guidance and time that they give up to the town. So if you see
Mayor,
that as well. So thank you, everyone. Can I have a motion to go into closed session, please?
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question, please?
No.
No?
Go into closed session.
I'll
please.
ask it anyway. Ms. Thompson, can you please tell us to, what
We can't hear you. Can't hear you. You're echoing.
Okay, well then just only listen to half of it. On coming north on the Palisades Ave, Sylvan Ave on 9W, there's a big Z cut in the road right by the street that goes by, that they're about to rent to the PSE&G. Can you tell me, what that big, do you have any idea what that was? Would that have to do with what they were prepping for PSE&G?
Yeah.
Just, and if someone could look at that, because that, all of a sudden, it's not one cut, it literally looks like Zorro came through town and made a gigantic Z across both lanes on the road.
Okay, we actually have a meeting scheduled with PSE&G tomorrow to review the status of the project. They previously notified us that due to delays in receiving certain shipments on supplies and products as part of the project, that they would not be able to start until this summer. But we will look into what is going on currently. And as I said, we're already scheduled to speak to them tomorrow morning.
Yeah, if you could just ask them if it has anything to do with that, because I think that hopefully with the, maybe they'll be able to settle it down a little bit. It's just like a speed bump in the middle of the road.
Okay, I'll take a look at it as well.
Okay, and your appointment, Mr. Mayor, your appointment, was that on the agenda? Because I don't happen to see that anywhere. I mean, I know you have the right to make an appointment, but I'm just wondering if anybody was advised of that, because I'm going over the.
I don't need to advise you of that. It's my appointment, and you just admitted that it's my appointment. So can I have a motion to go into closed session, please?
Make a motion.
You don't have to advise the council.
All in favor?
Real quick, if I could just, on the list of items to discuss, I want to also add the following litigation, which is not listed. One is McMorrow versus Borough of Englewood Cliffs, docket number Bergen L 782421-21. Tucci versus Borough of Englewood Cliffs, Bergen County L 7487-21. Duffy, Borough of Englewood Cliffs, L 3313-21. And give me one second.
You broke up now. What was that last one?
The last one I just read was Duff versus Borough of Englewood Cliffs, Bergen County L 3313-21.
Okay.
Borough of Englewood Cliffs versus Intrep Solutions, Bergen L 2069-21. And last but not least, In-Ray Fair Share Housing, docket number A 3119-20.
Mr. Mensch, these are all new?
These are not new cases. These are just, I have new updates since the time the agenda was published. So I wanted to be able to give everybody a quick update.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, all in favor of going to closed session?
Aye.
Okay, to public's gonna be placed in the waiting room.
I only heard one aye.
I say aye before.
I heard several.
Okay.
All right, all
Several.
in favor of going to closed session?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone recusing? Anyone abstaining? Okay, we're going to closed session. Can you please put the public into the waiting room? And to the public, thank you for being here tonight. We're gonna take a little while, so feel free to have dinner, and we'll probably rejoin you in about an hour.
We'll stop the recording. Pause.
Both sessions, actually.
Is it not pausing?
I have a motion to come out of,
Should be done in public.
I have a motion to come out of closed session for a moment.
I make a motion to go to come out from closed section.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No, I say no.
Okay.
I say no
So
because what
so
needs,
the issue is,
That's two, cast
we
your.
wanted to add an item to
This
the
needs to
closed
be-
session
this needs to
agenda.
be
Mr. Mensch, I think
discussed
the
in
vote-
Laura,
open.
can you mute them, please? I'm not going to speak over them tonight. We're not doing
It's
this.
2-2,
We're
Mr.
not
Mensch.
doing this,
No
Laura.
muting, please.
2-2 vote. Mayor, I think you
Thank
voted
you.
out of closed.
Okay, so the issue is a workplace safety
Make 'em
issue.
vote.
It should be discussed in closed session. Aspects of it may be discussed publicly later, but we wanted to have the ability to speak to the town engineer as it relates to workplace safety of our employees. So Mr. Mensch, would you please add that to the closed session agenda?
Yes. So
Mr.
we'll
Mensch,
go
can
back
you
to closed
please-
session for all the items listed on the agenda, the litigation I added before, as well as the item that you just mentioned, discussion with the borough engineer regarding some workplace safety issues.
Matt,
Okay,
So
we have a
technically-
motion to go into closed
So
session.
technically, Mr. Mensch, we're still
Make a
doing this
motion.
closed right now, right?
Could I have a
No.
motion to go into closed
No.
session?
We had a 2-2.
Make a motion to go into closed section.
Gentlemen,
Can I have a
gentlemen,
second?
I will help everyone do what they need to do if we can just take 2 seconds and do it in an orderly fashion.
Thank you.
Mr. Luciano, there was a 2-2 vote. I believe, unless I heard incorrectly, Mayor, you voted to break the tie to come out of closed session,
Of
correct?
course I did.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So we've now amended the agenda. There's now a motion to go back into closed session for all the items issued before, plus the item that the mayor added, which was the safety, workplace safety issue regarding the borough engineer discussion. We've added that to the closed session agenda. Councilman Farrell made a motion to go into closed session. I didn't hear a second yet.
Second.
All in favor?
Who seconded it?
Mr. Katrubis, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Yes, I
Yes.
oppose.
Opposed.
Okay, I break the tie. We're going to closed session.
Thank
Matt,
Yes.
I have a question. Do we also have to give notification of items that are being removed from the closed session agenda?
I don't think anything is being removed from the closed session agenda. We're just
My
adding.
understanding is that the discussion of the borough administrator search has been removed.
That's correct. I made that request.
Okay, then yes, then that's removed.
I don't think it was ever on there, but yes.
Okay, Matt, do we need another motion to go into closed session?
No, we're just removing, I mean,
Okay, all right.
we don't discuss it, there's no real issue. We just
Okay,
don't.
so we're going to close session. Thank you, public. We're
Pausing
going
recording.
to the waiting room. Thank you. Have a motion to come out of closed session, please?
David's not unmuted.
I'm not unmuted.
I could hear him though, so I-
But you're hearing it
I make the motion.
You might
be able to
hear him, but his
Have a
computer
second.
is on.
all in
Second.
favor?
Go ahead, Tim, just go for
Okay,
it.
I'm unmuted. Great, thanks.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we're at a closed session now. Could I have a motion to approve the August 11th, 2021 closed session minutes, please?
I move.
Is there a second? Okay, there's no second. To have a motion to
Motion
open to
to
the
change
public.
the order of business.
Second.
All in favor of opening to the public?
No, the motion
to
was,
change the order of business.
and I seconded it. And Matthew is muted as well there, Laura.
Oh, I'm sorry, Matt,
Matthew's
let
muted.
me,
Okay, you gotta unmute all us.
So, Kevin, all in
No.
favor of opening to the public?
You have a
No.
motion on the floor
Motion on
to
the floor.
suspend the order of business.
Suspend the
There's a
order.
motion to suspend the order of business and there's a second, okay?
Correct.
Why do you want to suspend the order of business?
Can you hear me? I'd like to do that because at the last meeting, Ms. Guest made some very good points. And I
Wait,
think.
what
that
did we have to, okay, we have
We-
to,
Excuse me, I'm.
You asked
don't
the
interrupt
question,
me.
let him
I'm
answer.
trying to answer
what's the reason why you want to actually suspend?
He's trying to
the order?
answer you.
I know, but can you be succinct?
He's
Don't ramble.
trying to answer you.
Okay, just very quickly, I think that we need to discuss new business. One of those things being Dr. Sakar's motion, the other being.
I don't know
Ms.
what that
Guest's
is. What?
Okay,
what's
so
Dr.
here,
Zucker's motion?
I don't
So
want to speak for
motion- let's
Councilman
take
Di
a vote on it.
Gregorio, but
Motion.
the reason why I'm seconding it is because at the end of our meetings, after the mayor gets everything done that he wants, he just calls for a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
We
so-
haven't done, well, let me finish, please. We haven't done new business. We haven't done old business. We haven't been able to speak. So we want to do a motion to suspend the order of business so that we can bring up things before we go to public so that people can have the opportunity to question and comment on what we're raising and the issues that we want to talk about that the mayor seems to not want to let us talk about.
So is it that you want?
I make a motion to call the
Is your
question.
motion to move new business?
Motion to call the question.
Listen, guys, be clear and be accurate.
Matt, you have a
Your
motion and a
motion-
second and a
Is
call.
your
of-
motion to move new
you have a
business?
Call of the question.
Second, let's call the
But
question.
people don't understand what they're voting on, sir. Can you just stop talking for a minute? The motion, I believe, is to move new business up
Now.
on the agenda to come before public comment. And
Yes.
the reason was that the two Democrats on council feel that they don't get a chance to do it in the normal order of business because they don't get a chance to speak. And yet we know from history and history.
Okay, we have
predicts
called the
future
question, Matt.
that we
We
have-
don't need it. We don't need a
We spend
lecture.
2 or
The
3
public
hours
knows.
extra on every meeting, listening to Mr. Di Gregorio and Mr. Luciano go
Mr.
on
Mayor.
and on and on, rambling.
Mr.
So
Mayor.
I do not support.
Mr. Mayor, you know as well as I do, you've had members,
Okay,
more
there's a
than one
motion, there's a
member of the
second.
public.
Go
More
ahead,
mem-
Laura,
You
make a
had
vote.
more than one member of the public that has
Laura, go ahead
questioned
and you can
why
have the vote.
this
I didn't know
happened.
who seconded that, Mayor.
I seconded it, David
Di
made the
Gregorio
motion, I
moved,
seconded it.
Luciano
Okay.
Hey,
second.
this is what Mario does with the meetings. When he's done talking, he thinks it's just over.
No,
Matthew
no,
is,
I do not support this, by the way, so go ahead.
There you go, Matt Ramon, you have your vote.
Can I?
no, I'm talking about that Matthew's on mute.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Laura, real quick,
Councilman,
I just want to see, is there a way you can make it so that I can unmute myself? I don't want to leave myself not muted the whole time.
I-
I don't know why you can't do that.
Mr. Lynch.
It's the settings that I showed you, Laura. You have, it's one for all. It's the global settings, so.
Right. So even the public now is on. Okay, no problem.
So basically, the reason why I want to do this is because every meeting that we've tried to have discussion, it's been closed before we have had the
We
discussion.
understand, we have a motion, we have a second.
Discussion about what though? What do you want to introduce?
Well, we'd like to introduce a few things. Number one, Dr. Sakar's very good suggestion that anything that's voted on that is introduced, the public gets a chance to comment.
We had already
on.
agreed
Number
on
two,
We voted on
Don't
that 2
interrupt
meetings
me,
ago.
please. I'd like to finish.
We
Please.
agreed on that. Why do you keep bringing up the same thing? Move forward.
Second,
please.
Second, I'd like to bring up new business, like we had pictures today of playgrounds, beautiful playgrounds, things that we can aspire to in town. Third,
Which
there's a
pictures?
resident that requested to have a park bench installed on Johnson Field on Whitty.
That's fine, it's not a problem.
So
Go ahead,
many
what
of
else?
those things I'd like to discuss now, take a few minutes now to discuss things that are not having to do with litigation, things that are having to do that residents have brought up, that improvements that can be made in town.
We
That's
are,
what I'd like.
that's fine. We have a motion and we
They
have
can
a
make those
second.
comments now, David.
Let's
Everything
vote
you've
on it, so
discussed
we're
so
not here
far.
till midnight.
We have a motion and we have a
What's the
second.
matter, Councilman Katrubis?
And we
Everything that
follow
you-
the order that we've always followed on the agenda. And I know things aren't good enough for you and Mr.
Well, that's the
Luciano.
whole idea of Robert's Rules of Order, where the council has the ability to do that.
Well, let's hear what the council wants. Let them vote. Go ahead.
That's what, but there's still discussion because Councilman Katrubis asked a question.
So look, we've already covered what Dr. Sackar wanted. We voted on that 3 meetings ago. The other two parts that you discussed, David, are on the agenda. So people are free to discuss them after this. There's no issue. So I don't.
So Tim, you don't agree that at the end of the meetings that everything just gets shut down? Like right now, I'll give you.
We're not required by law. We're not required by law to do any of this.
But by
Right? So we're not
then,
breaking the
Well,
law.
what does that mean? Required by law? So
But
you have
Mr.
to be required by
Luciano,
law to
let
want
me
to have
put
a
things in
discussion with the
perspective for
council
you.
members?
Well,
Mr. Luciano, let me put things in perspective.
I'm
The
not
last
talking to you.
Two meetings before,
talking to
you
Councilman
spent
Katrubis.
your time having a
I'm
no
talking to
confidence vote
Councilman
on me.
Katrubis.
So you wasted your own time.
I
you
wasted
wasted
my
your own
time on
time.
what?
You
On
wasted
what?
your own time at the
On
last
what?
two meetings on a
On
no
what?
confidence vote.
This
So
is a
you
new
pick-
one.
Pick the
I'm gonna
things
make
you want to
another
talk
one again
about
this
if they're
month.
so important to you, okay? Let's have the vote, Ms. Borchard.
Councilman Farrow,
No,
Councilman absent, Councilman Di Gregorio,
Yes.
Councilman Luciano,
Yes.
Council President Katrubis.
no, I mean, look, if the council
Okay,
was
thank you,
more,
Tim. It's
no,
all
hold
right.
on a second. No, hold on a
Move on.
second.
Move
If the
on. It's
council
all right.
was
Move
more
on.
engaged, if the
Move
council
on.
was more engaged,
I'll break the tie,
Thanks, moving
right?
on.
Laura?
Chris,
Okay.
no,
Mayor, you have to break
council
the
was more
tie.
engaged, we wouldn't
Okay,
have these issues.
last word on this, it's no. Let's
No,
move
don't forget,
on.
Tim, you brought
Have
up
a
things
motion
that
to
we
open
voted
to the
on at
public,
other
please.
meetings again and brought
That's
them up
not,
again.
that's not
Motion to
true.
open
to the
That's
public.
not
That's
true,
For
Glenn.
you to say
That's
that we
not
have
true,
other
Glenn.
things that we
That's
voted
That's
on
not true,
already.
Glenn. If you want to have a discussion.
make
we
the
can
motion
discuss it
to
right
open
now.
to the
How many times
But
do you
you're
vote
being-
on your
you're
subcommittee?
grossly
All right,
inaccurate. I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Farrow made a motion
Grossly
to open to the
inaccurate.
public. Can I have a second, please?
My concerns were the
Can I have a
concerns,
second to open to the public, please?
and
Second,
you denied us.
All in
and
favor?
you're gonna wait
Aye.
till the end of the meeting. and you're gonna
Anybody
close the meeting,
opposed?
Won't have the chance.
Okay, we're open to the public. Council, please stop the dialogue. The public has the floor. If you're a member of the public and wish to be heard, please raise your hand. And wait for me to recognize you, state your name and address, and just say what you need to say. I see Mrs. O'Shea's hand is up. I call upon Mrs. O'Shea.
Okay, thank you. Mary O'Shea, 12 Irving Avenue. I'm sorry, I somehow I lost my connection there for a minute, so I didn't know if you had the public portion by the time I got reconnected, but I'm glad it's not over. A couple of things. This is for Mr. Luciano, Mr. DeGorio. You had made quite a point about Cadwalder billing before they were hired. And in a similar situation, Mr. Munch billed the town almost $2,000 in fees before he was hired on September 13th. So I would like to ask Mr. Munch to reimburse the town for those charges that he put through and billed for when he knew he shouldn't have, for September 9th, 10th, 13th, 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 and 13th, all before he was hired on the 13th. So that was not correct for him to be billing. The second thing is, in his bills, he charges the town for talking with people in his firm. Different people in the firm bill $160 an hour.
Recording in progress.
For oh boy. All right.
Laura, there's
I'm
somebody
sorry.
who needs to be muted.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
not, my recording
Yeah.
is,
Okay. The people in his office, Bill, were talking to him, calling him, conferring with him. if he's dealing with people in his office, we shouldn't be charged, double charged. That's wrong. And that should be reversed. All those charges should be reversed. And there are numerous ones. I don't know the particulars of the people, but just by the initials in the bill, let me just say, MCL, MLC, the different other initials where people are consulting with Mr. Munch, and also when he brought his assistant or paralegal with him to the meeting on the 13th, he charged us for that person coming. That person also billed for being there. So I think that we're being overcharged repeatedly and repeatedly. Okay. And I would like to ask that to be refunded. And I would like to say why the council is not upset about paying for an attorney before he was hired. Okay, he should not have been paid. Okay, that's my main thing for tonight. And then I also saw the thing on the agenda about the grant for the senior citizens that was received for the COVID improvements. And I would like to thank Administrator Carol McMorrow for submitting that grant last year and thinking about the seniors that those improvements could be made. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? I see David Joanna Sacker.
Doctor, you're muted.
I'm David from Wells. I have previously made
Very hard to understand.
So Dr. Sacker's having trouble with his audio. Perhaps we'll come back to him.
Mayor, it looks like Ms. O'Shea may be unmuted, having two entries that may be causing the feedback.
Okay, can you, Ms. Borchard, there's a couple people who aren't muted, so maybe if we mute them, the others will be better received.
Can I be understood now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I have,
No.
there's an, I think I'm on two.
Okay.
I really do want an opportunity. Okay. I have previously made a simple suggestion, and I'd like to make it again this evening, that no resolution should be acted upon by the council without an opportunity for public discussion. And that's all I wanted to say. And I was hoping that there might be a possibility to get some action on that. The mayor himself has, on 4 previous occasions, publicly expressed agreement with the substance, with the principle of the suggestion. Councilman Katrubas has pointed out that we're not obligated to do that by state law, but I haven't heard him actually raise any objection to the principle involved of allowing public discussion on any new resolution before the council. So having heard no objections and several expressions of support for it, I'd like to know if there's any reason that it can't be put on the or even introduced in business and then acted upon.
I think, Doctor, there's 2 different things going on here. In terms of resolutions and ordinances,
Doctor?
the public will always have an opportunity to speak to those. There's other
Doctor,
items
I'd
that
like
are
to-
on the agenda. Mr. Di Gregorio, please let me finish.
What I'd like,
Mr. Di Gregorio, please let me
ask
finish.
Mr. Mensch
Laura, please mute
he'll
Mr.
send you
DiGregorio.
the
He's cutting me off. I
verbiage
don't want that.
that you sent
Laura,
us.
please mute
And
him.
would you be so
I am.
kind?
Please mute him. Thank you. We're not interrupting each other, Mr. DiGregorio. You are now on mute. You will be permitted to speak after I finish. Stop being rude, sir. Dr. Sacker, as I started saying before I was interrupted by Mr.
No, I was talking and I'm asking.
No, you interrupted me.
No,
Laura,
no,
please.
no. Please do not mute me
Laura, please
again.
mute
Let
him.
me
Let me
finish and then you can.
Let me finish. You wait for me, sir. You wait for me. I am the
Who
chair.
has control over the mute?
Laura, please.
I think that Mario Kranjak has
No, I
control
don't
over the mute.
actually.
Is that Laura? Are you
You're
muting
adding
me?
hours
I'm
to our
asked,
meeting.
I'm sorry, I'm being asked to do it.
Let
Go
me
ahead.
finish. Let me finish. Dr. Sacker, as I said, resolutions and ordinances, yes, the public gets to speak to them. The other items are things that we're not voting on. They're new business, they're old business. They're all listed for you. You're welcome to speak to those as well. But those are distinct from things that we vote on. So I'm
That's
not
why
really
I
sure
wanted
what-
to
I'm not
bring
really
this
sure
up,
what
the
your
new
point is.
business. I
Mr.
wanted to
DiGregorio,
change
it's really not
order
helpful for
so
you
we
and I to be
could
speaking
actually
over each
discuss
other.
this and
Mr.
we could ask
DiGregorio,
Mr.
you must
Mensch
stop.
to
Mr.
write
DiGregorio,
a
let me
resolution
finish.
that could be passed for the next time.
Everybody, this is how rude Mr. DiGregorio is. I am speaking and he cannot just sit there and let me finish. So Dr. Sacker, what is it that you actually don't agree with right now? I just told you that you have an opportunity to speak to everything on the agenda. And I'm not sure why this is even coming up again.
You sound angry. Okay. Without interference from anybody else, please, I'd like to have this direct conversation with the mayor, because he's asked me a question. I'd like an opportunity to answer it. It is true that when we see the agenda in advance of the meeting, and there is an open session to the public, that gives us an opportunity to discuss, to comment on matters on the agenda. But it almost invariably happens that after the closed session, for example, that some new resolution or motion or action is introduced. And because of the technicality that you've already closed the session to the public, it never gets reopened for an opportunity for the public to comment on new matters that are introduced that aren't on the agenda. It's happened at every meeting that something has come up that wasn't on the agenda.
May I ask a question? When you're talking about things that come up, are you talking about things that we're voting on or things that we're just talking about?
No, I'm talking about resolutions. For example, 4 meetings ago, Councilman Katrubis came out of a closed session and read a very long and complex and intricate and important resolution, and it was voted on with no public discussion. There was no opportunity. And I have the impression that technical objections are being made to a suggestion that's really very simple.
I agree with you. Everything should be able to be discussed, but you're also being very political right now because you're using Mr. Katrubis's example, but you're not using Mr. Luciano's example, because at the same meeting that you're referring to, and now I recall, Mr. Luciano brought something up. So let's just be square and fair with each other, sir. The Democrats and the Republicans both need to do this, okay?
I agree. And frankly, although it is well known that I have political opinions when they are more often in agreement with the Democrats and with the Republicans or with you, that has nothing to do with a simple good government recommendation I'm making.
That's
that
fine.
Resolution
We
before
agree with you.
be open for discussion. That's all.
We agree. We
Okay.
agree.
Okay, and if I may, please,
Sometimes
Mr.
we
Mayor,
slip, okay? But
Mr.
sometimes-
Mayor, please, that just because you mentioned my name, every meeting that anything has ever been introduced, been brought up that wasn't on the agenda, I have always tried to open the meeting to the public. That was always shot down. So it's not fair for you to say, just like Mr. Luciano did, because what you're leaving out is if I did that, just like I did with what Dr. Satcher was saying about Councilman Katrubis, I made the motion to open the meeting to the public. And if we remember correctly, and if the people listen to the tape, who was the first one to jump at, do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a motion
Okay,
to
so-
adjourn and close the meeting? That was Mayor Kranjak. So let's get the
So
facts
the-
straight out to the public. Thank you.
The word you used was always, and that always gets you in trouble, Mr. Luciano, because always means always. And last week, you introduced a resolution twice that was not on the agenda to recapture fees that were being paid to another law firm. And that wasn't on the agenda, and you didn't ask for the public to be open. So that makes you a liar tonight in front of everyone, okay? Thank you.
I do think that we should try to codify this somehow, and I'd like to ask Mr. Mensch for his advice on how we can do this. How can we put this in our bylaws?
We did that already. We resolved it, didn't we, Mr. Mensch, like 3 meetings ago?
I don't recall that it was codified. I certainly can look at putting language together that you can debate or look at how to do that. I'm not sure as an aside, anything that's in your bylaws, the bylaws have a procedure where you can, just like you tried to do tonight in terms of suspending the order of the meetings. And I don't know that the law would trump something that comes up. But I can take a look at it, and the borough can decide if there's something that it wants to do, if it can do it.
I think Dr. Sakar's a recommendation, and if we can put some muscle behind it, an ordinance or whatever you want to call it, a bylaw, I think that would serve the community's interest very, very well. It's only respectful. I totally agree with this recommendation.
Ms. Guest, go ahead, Ms. Guest.
I would
Thank you.
wish that this,
Okay, Mr. Sacker, Dr. Sacker, we're done now with you. We're moving on to the next resident.
We're done with you, Dr. Sacker. You
We
like
have-
that? He's
We have to
done
move
with you.
forward, sir. We're not going to dwell.
I
on
think you should let Dr. Sacker finish.
He
Ms. Guest.
spoke. We get the point. We got it. We agreed. We're moving on. Ms. Guest, go ahead.
You didn't do that to Miss O'Shea, though.
Ms. Guest, I looked high and low all week, and I couldn't find any poison ivy from last week when you mentioned that there was some, but go ahead, sir. Ma'am.
Got to start with her, too.
I could find it for you, Mara, if you'd
Okay,
like.
we'll go.
I can
Maybe
show
we
you
can do
exactly where
that
the
together.
patches
Show
are.
us the-
Can I can show you exactly where the patches are, and I'm highly allergic to it, which is why I know where to find it.
Okay,
So,
we'll do.
and with reference to the poison ivy and to my comments last week, and Mario's follow-up comments seem to imply that I was disparaging our hardworking members of the DPW, which was, of course, not what I meant and not what I was talking about. And I do realize potholes don't get filled in the winter time. It was more of a general comment about the town's focus on litigation and lawsuits rather than the things that actually we need in our town. And on a sunny day, Mary, I would be happy to show you the enormous patches of poison ivy that I see very frequently. But on another matter,
In the winter or in the summer?
Excuse me?
Are you talking about poison ivy in the winter or in the summer?
Talk over you.
It stays all year long, okay?
Okay.
And you can get it in the winter when it even doesn't have any leaves, green leaves on it. So now we've covered that. What I'd like to actually talk about is at our last meeting, and I asked Council President Katrubis about the litigations, about how far and how long it was going to, the town was planning on going with it. And Mario, you mentioned that there was a case in, I believe in Westchester County about affordable housing that the town won, and that
It was
you
the
were ready
county,
to go
yeah.
can I finish, please?
Yeah, it wasn't
that-
the town, it was the county that won.
The county, okay, the county of Westchester that won, and you're ready to go all the way to federal court. And these processes are usually very, very lengthy. How much time do you want the town and the council to spend on this? And in your experience as a lawyer and your knowledge of affordable housing litigations, how long do you think it will take for it to arrive at a federal court level? And what is that ultimately where you want to go?
Well, what I want to do is prevail and win and protect the taxpayers of this town and not cave in to the state of New Jersey and its lunacy
So-
when it comes to affordable housing, because if the state of New Jersey actually had their way, they would build as much affordable housing as they could, and they wouldn't have enough people right now with the numbers that they have to fill those houses. So it makes no sense. So, which means when the things don't make sense in politics, that means someone is making money and it's not the residents,
So given
developers
the
and their
fact,
political friends.
so from that, it sounds to me like, you just every single lawsuit, that if there's an appeal and there's another lawsuit, an appeal and another lawsuit, you just want to keep appealing it until you obtain the result you want, which is to ignore or to discount the state of New Jersey's affordable housing laws because
No,
you feel
that's not what I
personal.
said.
May I finish?
No,
Please?
because you're
Because
misspeaking
you
now.
finished,
You're
you feel
misspeaking.
that they're
No,
unjust.
what I want to build is 100% affordable housing to satisfy our number. What I don't want to do is triple our population with the 80-20 split between 80% market and 20% affordable. Okay,
So-
which is what your colleagues on your side of the aisle want to do. Why do they want to do it? Because their political friends make money when they do that. And
I
those
really-
friends appoint judges to keep the whole sham going. Okay,
I
that's
really
why I want
find
to fight it.
I really find your aspersions that people are doing everything for some kind of ulterior motive with money and appointing judges and all that quite unnecessary. But I'd like to say,
It's a reality,
if
though.
you said, when does your term up, Mario?
My term is up at the end of 23.
At the end of 23. And these cases usually go on for years. And this one
And they
has been
have,
going
right?
on
Because
for a
it's
very
been going
long
on for
time.
6 years.
So this is
800
not-
Sylvan's been trying to take a commercial piece of property and put high-density housing there. And
So-
it's been 6 years and they haven't done it yet, okay? And that's what we're here for. Now, there's a new owner, much more respectful than the old owners. And we agreed to disagree, but we're doing it respectfully. And,
So
they're just taking
respectfully-
advantage of a system that hurts taxpayers because taxpayers in New Jersey
respectfully-
don't have a voice.
So respectfully, I feel like I don't have a voice in this whole discussion because the town members like myself who do not want to continue the litigations, who do not want to continuously bring these cases up over and over again, I feel like our voices are not being heard. And I'm certainly not being paid by anybody or appointing any judges or have any political influence at all. But I can tell you a lot of people in town don't want this.
Well,
And so we
yeah.
would really like, and I'm speaking on behalf of these people, we would like these kinds of litigations to stop.
And you know
so
what?
I
That's the beauty of
understand how
democracy,
may I
right?
finish? I'd like to finish my
No, let
statement.
me just say, pick up on your point.
My timer
No,
on.
no,
I
your
still
timer's
have-
not on. No,
I
no,
still
but I want to
have
pick up on
I
that
have
point.
my timer on,
You
but
said
I
there's a lot of
paused it.
people, but there's a lot more people that disagree with you. And those are the constituents that in a democracy that should be listened to, right? You're free to triple your taxes, but you're not free to triple my taxes. Okay?
I'm
that's
not,
what I'm
and
trying
you
to
are
stop.
not free, and you're not free to spend my taxpayer money on frivolous lawsuits
They're
and
not
on
frivolous.
constant and continuous litigation.
Why are they
And on
frivolous?
constant continuous litigation that is getting us absolutely nowhere. And to be honest, I don't feel like you're free to be wasting our time with these kinds of things, with these constant interruptions. Every time you have spoken over me, Mario, I have paused my timer, which I have running right now.
I'm not timing
Now
you.
I am out.
I'm not
now I
timing you.
am
That's a
out of time.
democratic
I would just
law in
like,
town.
may I
They
please finish
time. I don't
without you
time.
interrupting me?
I don't time you. Just to be
I'm
clear.
timing myself out of respect.
Well, that's up to
for
you
the
if you want to
council.
time yourself. I'm
So
not
could
timing
you
you, Emma.
please, if you could
But if you
stop
please just let her
interrupting
speak.
me, that would be really, really helpful.
Well, I just want to like stop factually incorrect statements right when you make them, right? So that's my style. Because I don't want you to ramble thinking that you're actually.
Okay, and I'd like to stop factually incorrect statements that you make. For example, you're,
Exactly.
saying that you don't see any poison ivy, okay, which is just ridiculous.
I
So
don't.
what I'd
Middle of
like to
winter,
say is, what
Emma,
I'd
it's the
like
middle of
to
winter.
say is, first of all, kudos and thanks to the DPW. And if I
Oh,
did not.
this week you're
last
loving
time,
them. Last week
and
you
then
weren't loving them.
Can
second
you
thing
let
I'd
the
like to say,
residents
Mark,
speak?
Please, just let me talk.
Last week you were
Okay.
crushing the poor guys, and this week you're loving them. That's
My
okay.
goodness, are you done?
No, but look, let's be
Are
consistent.
you done? Can I finish my statement? Because when you're done, I'll finish my statement and then you can move on to the next question. Are you finished?
But what do you want to talk about? Potholes or affordable housing? Where are we going?
No, it should really like you to let her
I
speak.
just like to wrap up.
All right, wrap up. Got it.
Thank you. My goodness. What I'd like to do is, again, I would like this town council to stop wasting our time and stop wasting our money with frivolous lawsuits. That's what I would really like. And that way we can concentrate on things like in the springtime, taking care of potholes, and in the springtime, in the summer, and in the fall, taking care of the poison ivy and the parks and the playgrounds that need our attention. And I know all the councilmen feel the same way. I know you have your crusade against the affordable housing litigations in the state of New Jersey, and you are convinced that our council members and other people are making some kind of money or making some kind of political point. Believe me, we're not. We have a lot of other bigger things to think about with our own lives and our own families. And we are expecting and we are hoping that our elected officials take care of town business to the best of their ability without resorting to pointless crusades. Thank you for hearing me.
So here are 2 points, right? One point is that it's the council that makes these decisions. It's not me, right? So, it's the council and it's me, right? The other point is that we are able to multitask. We always are, right? So we could have litigations going on, and yes, we could fill potholes.
That's
Mark Neville, who is here.
yes, very good,
Mark
Ellen.
Neville is still here. We could multitask, right? Mark, we could walk and chew gum. You guys do a great job. I always say that. Thank you very much. And, the potholes are potholes. They come every winter because that's where we live. We live in the Northeast. And the poison ivy comes in the summer. And you, Mark, thank you, and your men and your team, you deal with both. You do a great job. And I saw Mark last year with a weed whacker. I mean, I thought the superintendent of DPW wouldn't be whacking weeds, but there he was. And so.
Thank you, Ms. S., for your comments. Thank you so much. I believe it's a breath of fresh air, and I 100% agree with your viewpoint. Let's move on. Let's work with the DPW. Let's work with the departments. Let's bring this town to a level that it's not seen before.
Okay, anybody else in the public wishing to be heard?
Am I going through?
I don't see.
Did you just hear me?
Sorry, Mr. Telzer, yes, sir.
Hello?
I see Mr. Telzer, yes, hi.
Yeah, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. State your name and address, please, thanks.
Michael Telzer, homeowner, 9 Churchill Road. I just want to say regarding the last person who spoke, and I'm not political and I'm not taking any sides, but to say that these things, the affordable housing, is not political. I'm not talking about the local town, but in New Jersey, which is what I understood you to say. I'm sorry, is that Emma? I don't know your name. Is outrageous. New Jersey is political, and the courts are political, and the civil courts are political, and our judges are appointed. And how anyone can think that this affordable housing thing is not political and not inherently corrupt, if not, outright corrupt on a state level, to me is a ridiculous notion. And also, regarding the housing, whatever it was, affordable housing, 400 or 600 units to be built, so that would be 400 to 600 families coming to a town of 1,800 or 1,900 families. So we have 1,800, let's say, more or less, families in the town, and then we're going to add 400 to 600 families, and then we have more affordable housing mandates to meet in the future. There's something wrong with that picture, and anyone who doesn't see that, I think is missing something. So I don't live in the town. I own a home in the town, and I just think that regardless of where you fall on whether you want to keep litigating this or not, for each of the council members, to dismiss the fact that New Jersey is corrupt, that this is all corruption, and that people are making a fortune on it on a state level. I don't know anything about the council in terms of that. It is outrageous, and I think can't we all kind of agree that there's corruption in New Jersey and that affordable housing is likely corrupt, as it is just about everywhere in the country? So that's all I have to say on that. And I just want to add that my issue with the town, known to many of you, is not over by any stretch of the imagination. But that's a discussion for another day. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there
If I
anyone
can
else
just make a
from the
fast
public?
comment, responding to that. The litigation is costing a ton of money. It has cost a ton of money. And what people have to realize is that this could all get worse. You could be looking at a lot more housing. You could lose your immunity. You look at, you have a Fort Lee North right here at 800 Sylvan. They could very well fit 600 up there. So, you know, every time we've tried to, that the mayor has tried to mess with this, it's gotten worse and worse and worse. You look at the numbers over the years, I mean, they speak for themselves.
Well, neither am I. It seems like.
He's muted himself.
Can we move on, please?
Okay, can I have a motion to close the public portion?
Make the motion.
No, there's one more person. No, there's one more person to speak.
Oh, I see a hand just went up. Yes. Debbie's iPhone. Please state your name and address.
Hi, Deborah Sabari, 106 Hollywood Avenue. I don't know why this is echoing.
Microphone on, and they need to shut it off.
Okay, yeah. Is that better? No, I'm still
If everybody could just look down and mute their mic.
Laura, can you just mute everybody except for Ms. Sabari?
Okay.
Okay. Hello?
It's still happening. Give me one moment.
That's because there's quite a few people still unmuted.
So they're all muted.
Is this any better?
Better.
Okay, we good?
Okay.
Okay, so I wanted to say I attended a Board of Education council meeting a few weeks ago, where they had a presentation regarding the effects of the high-density housing on our school system. And I wasn't surprised to find out that actually it is not such a big impact. And I wish that the council, this mayor and council, would share with the town what the effects of the impact of our additional housing is going to put on this town. It actually turns out that based on historic numbers, that we would have an additional 35 students in the district. Now, I know that Glenn Luciano attended, so did Dave DiGorio. Nobody else from this council attended the meeting to hear what the professionals had to say and the planners had to say in regards to what this would do to our school district, which was kind of disappointing in itself. But I think that whether it's David or Glenn or somebody on this council needs to apprise the district of what the effects of this will be. Nobody is talking about the additional revenue that would come into the town with this new projects that are going to be coming in, not the stuff that the town is building themselves on Hudson Terrace, but the 800 Sylvan project. And, you know, it's important that we stop making this sound like this is doom and gloom and that it's going to cause our taxes to triple, because that's not the case. So how about the town do a presentation for the district showing them exactly what the numbers are, what the student count is, because the professionals that were hired by the Board of Education actually were in complete agreement with the professionals that were hired by the borough when I was on the council. And this is not doom and gloom. So please, somebody should take the time to do a presentation for this town, given them the reality of what the numbers really are, and stop scaring everybody. Because it
I'd like
is
to
not
speak to that when
doom and
she's
gloom,
done,
and
please.
it is not triple your taxes. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Kaputa.
Yeah, so the first question that I have to all the council members is, who read this report? Did you read it, Glenn?
I read it, actually. And
I
don't
read it
believe a
too.
word in
I read it too.
I don't believe a word in it.
I'll take it a step further because the account, yes, I wasn't at that meeting, but the account that I have received is in stark contrast to what Ms. Sabari is saying right now. And I'll leave it at that. David, did you read that report?
Oh, well, I suggest that you share that report with the community and give a presentation.
Well,
Have the
look, when I read the
professionals give a
report, I didn't see,
presentation.
I saw a lot more students than 35 students.
No, what you saw was
I
a
know what I saw.
presentation that said if every single overlay zone was to become
Here's the crux of the
residential.
problem. So you're only giving a piece of the information, are we, Mr.
No,
Clerk?
because you're
That's the
giving the
issue here.
doom and gloom.
No, I'm sorry. This is where we staunchly disagree.
So then
I
why
believe-
don't you
I
have the
believe-
town attend a presentation?
I believe that the report was accurate when you take into account the overlay zones. And
What,
it
that
doesn't
10
take,
years from now?
it doesn't matter when it is. The point is you sold
Of
it out.
course it matters.
No,
Tim,
let's just
you're
agree
not
to
being
disagree.
honest with the
No, I'm
community.
being honest, Debbie. I think you have the history. of being
No,
dishonest.
you're not.
And I will leave it at that. And I'm sorry, this isn't a
Well,
back and
if
forth.
I
I don't
can,
want to do
if I
this
may,
with you. Can you please mute
I-
Ms. Sabari? She doesn't need, I'm just answering
Excuse
what you
me?
said. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're gonna get muted because he didn't interrupt you and you shouldn't be interrupting him.
Well,
Who's
he's
muted?
talking
No
about
one's
me
muted.
and what
Ms.
I
Borchard,
said.
please mute
Look,
Debbie's
Debbie, if you're gonna
iPhone.
be honest with the
That's
public.
okay.
Don't
I
just
will
give
be
me the
glad
information
David's-
and
Can I
pretend
do,
that,
can I
and
have, can I
pretend
reply
that
to
the
that
rest
too,
of the
Mr.
public
Katrubis,
doesn't.
since you
Hold
asked me
on
a
a second,
question?
Glenn. I'm not finished, please.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
Please just don't come in and give us this small little story when in the end, most of the council people never read this report. I have, and you knew very well that it took into account the overlay zones. And there's going to be a huge problem when these things get turned over. And that's been the crux of our arguments from the very beginning. And that's all I have to say on the matter. Thank you very much.
I agree with you.
Can I
Well
make a
said.
comment, please? Since Tim, you asked me a question. I did read the report. And I believe that, you know what? The Republican report, the Republicans' affordable housing plan has the overlay zones the same as the Democrats did. So I did read the report. And not only did I read the report, you're gonna tell us in all honesty that you think that that number with the unmet need, which includes the Unilever property, which includes, and I don't mean 800 Sylvan, I mean all the other commercial properties that they, in their grand scheme of things of unmet need, you're gonna take the word that it's gonna be 100%. And that's what everybody's doing. That's what Debbie's referring to as the doom and gloom. Because you know what? The unmet need is never, ever going to be met. It's a pie in the sky, just like the mayor thought that 57 of our affordable housing units were gonna meet our obligation. It's never gonna happen. So I agree that, you know what? The part that they have a guarantee on between 400 and 800 units, that is definitely 450 and maybe 600. So I think there's not one borough, one municipality, one city in the whole state that is ever going to be able to meet their unmet need. And we talk about this, you know, I just read in the article the other day where Wayne just got hit with like 2,000 new units, because you know what? They're a community that had, like we have, a very big commercial area with corporate headquarters that now are all being converted to housing, just like everywhere else. And once again, it goes back to, you know what? If Mary O'Shea and Orville and the mayor and the rest of his crew on the planning board didn't deny the commercial application, would never be in this situation at all. So I disagree with you, Tim, with all due respect, that you can't use that 100% an unmet need. It's never gonna happen. That's like saying
This has
Cadillac
nothing to do with
down their
unmet need.
building and build affordable housing because it's in the overlay zone. That's unrealistic.
This doesn't have anything to do with unmet need, Glenn. You rezone those properties. You gave away the rights to those properties. What do you think somebody's going to do when it comes to their turn to deciding what to do with that property? It's pretty simple mathematics if you ask me.
Well,
So-
then you're, like I said, you're a proponent of believing that 100% of the unmet need is the number that you need to use, and that Englewood Cliffs is going to be held to the 100% unmet need, and that's what we should be planning on. That's just doesn't work that way.
Okay, we'll see.
Well, the point of the matter is that those overlay zones are really the state putting a gun to every taxpayer's head here in our town, saying you are going to provide for future high-density housing, right? And that's why, Glenn, and I do agree with you, those unmet needs will never be met, because this is what the state does. They create these crazy large numbers, and then when their friends need to develop more property, they trickle it out, and you're never going to get to the end zone because the end zone keeps moving back on you. And this is the way it works in New Jersey. The whole thing is shambolic, and I've been saying that from day one. And then they get people like Debbie Sabari on councils throughout the state to vote the way their friends tell them to vote. And guess what? She resigns and we're left holding the bag, right?
Well, we have that example here, how people vote how their friends want them to vote, but I actually have to defibrillate myself, because for you to say that you agree with me, I had to get up off the floor.
Right, because the unmet need is an infinite number. It just keeps
So
going.
you know so you in yourself have to admit that that's never going to be met. And the second part of what I'd like to ask you.
But it's never going to be met, but parts of it are going to get trickled out and become requirements for us, which is Mr. Katrubis's point. These overlay zones are the death of towns. We will look like Fort Lee and Edgewater and
Mr.
Weehawken.
Mayor.
That's
Mr.
what we
Mayor.
will look like in 10 or 20 years. Because
Mr.
people
Mayor.
like Sabari, Aversa, your friends, Mr. Luciano, Mr.
Okay,
Gregorio,
you're being
voted for
ridiculous
this.
now.
Mr. Mayor, did your plan that you keep touting to this day of your 77, 57 units, all built by the town, did that include an overlay zone?
Yes, it did.
It did,
No,
because
wait,
we
I
were
know
forced to
that,
have one. Like
no,
I said, it
but I
is
want
a
the mayor to
gun.
admit
It
to
is a
everybody in
gun
the
to our
public
heads by
That
the
his
state of New
overlay
Jersey.
zone was exactly
We were
the
forced
same
to have
as
overlay zones, but
our
the lawyers-
overlay zone.
But we had different ones. Don't forget, we had different ones. They
Did
weren't
you
the
have
same,
overlay
but it was
zones that
still
were-
a gun to
You
our
had
head.
vastly
Did
different
you have
ones,
overlay
Glenn.
zones that were
You had vastly
90%
different ones, Glenn.
No,
similar?
we had different ones.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We had
Then
different
we're gonna
ones.
agree to disagree, because you
No,
had
no, it's
overlay zones
factual. We
the
had
same
different overlay
exact
zones.
way as the
And if it was up
Democrats
to
did.
me, we wouldn't have any overlay zones
What-
because we don't have any place to do this.
Mayor, with all due respect, let's simple, okay? Your plan had overlay zones, maybe not the same exact.
No, nowhere near your
Okay.
amounts. Nowhere
It had
near your
more.
I
amounts.
would respectfully ask everybody to look at what the plan that they had and the plan that was in that's in the
Yeah, but
Democratic
back up a
plan.
bit, back up a step here. We didn't
Thank
want
you,
any
sir.
overlay zones. They're forcing that on us. Basically, what happens to the public here is you get people who don't live
That
in
was
our town
forced on us
coming to our
also.
town and telling us how we're gonna live, how we're going to behave, what we're going to have to do to appease them and their friends. Otherwise, we suffered the wrath of judges, right? That's the way it works.
Town
in
in
New
every
Jersey.
other town in the state of New
Wait,
Jersey.
why are you speaking? You should be muted, okay?
Because you're speaking
You're not
about me.
recognized right now. No, Laura, I got to mute her.
He's just trying to set the facts straight, Mayor, as you
I
know
am
as
setting
well
the
as I
facts
do.
straight. And by the
Besides your
way, if Mayor
hyperbole-
Parisi and his father before me in 1997 built the 7 units that they were supposed to, we wouldn't have been jammed up the way we were. But you know what happened? God forbid, a Republican won a mayor election, and then all of a sudden the state says, hey, wait a minute, for 42 years, your town did nothing. For 42 years, we had a Democrat as a mayor and they left him alone. I
And
come
there
in
was
as
numerous
mayor,
years
had
in there that the
corruption,
Republicans
so
had
now all of a sudden,
control
it's a
and did
Republican
nothing as
mayor,
well.
and we got to make him suffer. But they picked the wrong Republican mayor to pick on, okay? That's why there's not a shovel in the
That's right.
ground.
Moving ahead, we
I
have
see,
to be very
Mayola
careful
Katrubis.
because we are risking
Ms.
making
Katrubis,
it
you can
worse.
unmute
And every
yourself.
time we've tried to fight this, it's gotten worse. all over throughout the years. So I think we have to be very careful. And I
No,
agree that we
42
should take
years, Your
take.
party did nothing and left me
We
holding the
need
leaky
to-
bag of you know what, right?
I just like to
It
want to
is
say,
not, the sky is not falling, as Debbie Sabari said, and we can handle this.
You don't know that,
Maybe
David.
even
You
we
don't
can
know that,
provide some
David.
housing for people that are being
We
displaced
don't know the
from
sky's
the
not falling.
Ukraine. You know, we're gonna have, we can welcome in these people. They're not gonna devastate our schools. They're not going to be in the residential area. They're not going to be in skyscrapers. They're going to be in a hopefully well-constructed development on 800 Sylvan, which is not in the residential area. Welcome to these new people. They will enrich our town. The sky is not falling. They will provide more tax revenue for us. Thank you.
So, and just one last question, if I may, please, without
Okay,
being
there's
worse,
another
but
member of
Tim,
the public.
Councilman Katurbis, you believe that CNBC plans on leaving Englewood Cliffs and that land's gonna be developed? And we should plan for
I
that?
only believe, at this point, I believe in one thing. David did not read that report, and he's
what does that
grossly
have to do with my
underqualified to
question?
give any sort of opinion, and he's just
But wait, I'm
he's
asking,
misinforming the
I'm
public.
not asking about David.
I have nothing further to say on the matter, Dave.
There's
Oh,
a
okay.
member of the public with her hand up, Miss
Thank
Iona Katrubis, please.
Hi, Iona Katrubis, 54 Hickory Street, Englewood Cliffs. I hope I can get through this without being interrupted. I don't have a lot to say, and I wouldn't have said anything at all, but for the nonsense I've heard the last 5 minutes. The obligation that this council and the council prior to the current council, the obligation they have and had is to the residents today, the residents tomorrow, the residents in 10 years, and the children I plan to leave my home to. So you shouldn't really be so concerned with what your taxes are going to be in 3 years, but you should be considering what our taxes will be to the children that we hope to leave our property to. And it has not been considered. It definitely was not considered by the prior Democratic Council. And Ms. Sabari herself just said to Tim, when is this going to happen? In 10 years? Yes, in 10 years. Let's say it happens in 10 years. Is that less impactful? Does that mean that we should sign away our rights and we should allow these overlay zones in this ridiculous settlement agreement that was executed? I mean, it's completely unheard of that we're not really sitting down and talking about the numbers of the overlay zone, because that is the potential danger that we are now at risk of. And that's all because of this really ridiculous settlement agreement that was signed. The Democrats had every opportunity to fix this problem, and that would have been when the Democrats were in power. That was when Parisi was in power, and he did nothing. And that's why we're in this position, not necessarily because the planning board did this or that. So really, the Dems really got to walk away from this argument about what the planning board did, because there was a very long period of time that we would not have even gotten to the planning board had the Democrats done what should have been done. And I'm pointing to Democrats and Republicans, not really because it should be a divisive issue, only because of this clear line in the sand that you've drawn. It shouldn't be that. The council, as you are sitting now, should really be working together to do something about the problem that we are in, despite who did it, despite who caused this problem. And, you know, it was pointed out that nobody from this council went to the Board of Ed meeting, but you know, a lot of us are very involved in the school, and a lot of us do know what happened at that Board of Ed meeting. And Mr. DiGregorio kept saying over and over again, from what I understand, that it was empty nesters and young couples that were going to be taking over these 400 to 800 units. So we really shouldn't be so concerned with our schools being flooded with students.
And I didn't say that. I said, let me tell you, let me clarify, if I may, Mrs. Katrubis.
Sure.
This was said by the experts, by the professionals. Okay, so I just want to make that clear. I listen to the professionals. I've seen predictions in other districts spot on. This prediction is spot on.
The prediction for let's think about this. 400 to 800 units, 35 students. Does that make any sense to you?
Zero.
I
Well,
mean,
Mr.
it's
Trubus,
in the numbers.
I'm sorry.
The
to
report
interrupt you,
did not say 400 to 800 units, 35 students. That's what you're telling the people right now. It's ridiculous. 400 to 800 units is going to be a lot more than 35 students. So let's stop lying to the public.
Mrs. True seemed to have read the report as well, and in the scale that they used, and the 35 number comes from, if at the 450 units were all built, there would be 35 more students. So I'm gonna make up a number. If there was 500 students at the height of our population in the school, 5 years ago, I believe, is when the guy used the number, the range, we would be 35, we would be at 535. Today, we might be at 400 students. So in effect, yes, I agree with you. We might add 135 students, but the impact isn't 135. The impact is the 35 additional students at the height of what our population was. So that's the impact, because even the gentleman at the Board of Education meeting said, listen, if you were able to operate with 500 5 years ago, and you're at 430, and we're predicting 535 new, total population, you should be able to absorb that. And the funny thing is we had our own professionals that did analysis that the school didn't agree with and said I found it very ironic that the mayor and just said that he finds that this report was suspicious. But that's exactly what the Board of Ed said when our professionals did it. And it seemed like the impact wasn't going to be that much. And now that they come back and say, you know what, it's not going to be that big of an impact. And now the mayor's going to say, I don't believe their report. So I
Mr.
just want to be
Luciano,
clear on where the 35 came from.
I caught bits and pieces of what you said because there was echoing. I don't know if anybody else had the same problem. And I have a 10 o'clock call, so I have to run. I'm just going to make one last statement, which is I believe at that Board of Ed meeting, the Board of Ed disagreed with the report that you're talking about because they said it didn't factor in the fact that enrollment was down and that there were changes to the, it also didn't factor in the changes to the student body due to the pandemic. So that's all. I got to run because I'm 1 minute past my.
Okay, thank you. But they did, when I was there, they did take that into
You all
consideration.
have to realize that experts only give you what you tell them to give you, right? So don't trust experts unless they're your experts.
That's awesome. Don't trust
Right?
experts.
Don't trust experts because they're hired to just tell people what they're being told to tell them.
Trust the mayor who's
So
lost every
I remember
single case
in
we've ever
July of
had.
2019, let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. In July of 2019, when we had 300 people at the school for an affordable housing meeting, the experts said that they assumed that 1-bedroom apartments would have no children in them at all. That was the presumption, right? So don't think the public is dumb, right? That the public understands. 800 units is going to be more than 35 children, more than 135 children.
Sure.
And you'll be
CNBC
building
is
new
gonna leave
schools, and your
Englewood
taxes will
Cliffs, and they're gonna
triple.
build another
And you're going to
500
remember what I
units
just told you. Your taxes are going to triple. It's going to be your own fault, Glenn. All right. Is there anybody else from the public? Okay. Can I have a motion to close the public portion, please? Can I have a motion to close the public portion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Can I have a second, please? Mr. Farrow's muted. Can you unmute the council, please? Can I have a motion to, can I have a second to the motion to close to the
I
public?
second.
All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.
Okay, next on the agenda
Can I ask a question?
is, no, because we're going through the
No.
agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
There's no
can you
point
please
of
tell
order.
me why our
Discussion and
meetings are in
council
public?
review. Mr. Luciano, we just closed the public.
I know, and you
We have
never
an agenda.
recognize me. I asked you politely if I could speak, and every time I say, you say
You're
no.
echoing. You're echoing. You have to get in a room different than Mr. Di Gregorio is in. Otherwise, the two of you will echo all night.
Okay, so
It's
let's
bad
see.
enough listening
Is
to
that
you
better?
alone, but together is even worse. But so next on the
There's an
agenda, is
echo. It's not
discussion and
coming from
council
It's not
review.
coming from us. I don't know.
Borough engineer, okay, Mr. Mensch, what do we do here? What are the parameters of speaking on this?
So if the question for, the borough engineer is simply talk about the grant, which I know is on the agenda, and whether he's here, then we can talk about the grant. I don't know if there's anything that needs to be discussed. There was a closed session, as everyone knows, discussion regarding some internal concerns over safety matters, which were already addressed in closed session. So for the discussion section, Mayor, I don't think you need to do anything. To the extent you want to let Mr. Potentially get out of here a little sooner, you can certainly have him speak about the grant.
What are we referring to right now?
We're on the agenda. Mr. Hippolyte, go ahead, please, and thank you for hanging in there with us this evening. We had you at closed session. You could touch on the subject that we touched on in closed session without creating a workplace issue, if possible, and then speak to the grant as well.
All right. So on the generator issue, there was a surge from the power lines in the street into the police station. That surge basically shut off all the breakers. The breakers had to be returned back on, and when they were returned back on, it took some time to get the police communications back up, but the police were able to communicate using cell phone devices, so there was really no disruption in communication. The generator works fine. I'm going to work with Mark, Neville, and the administrator to look at putting a surge protection on the service side of the police department to avoid that from happening in the future.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Mensch, this is exactly the conversation we had in closed session. Can you tell us why we needed to have that in closed session?
Councilman, I will be happy to give you some remarks in closed. I know that that Mr. Hippolyte needed to go into that level of detail that he did, but
yeah, we had more detail in closed session, so suffice it to say, and we'll leave it at that. Mr. Hippolyte, thank you very much. Is there anything else that you had to tell us today?
Now you have a grant application in for Bergen County Open Space to do improvements to Whitty Field, which would include a dog park, a new playground to replace the one you have with the accessible playground, and the pavilion. It's only the application to the grant. If you move forward with it, you have the ability to get one or all three projects funded. It would go as one package, or if you don't, you won't be able to get any money in grant. So you have to move forward at this meeting because you need to have a public hearing, and then you have to submit the application in April.
Mr. Hippolyte, is this the same plan that we did last year?
No.
This is different.
Yeah, you received a grant last year from Open Space to redo the walkways.
So, and what is this one specific for? Because I haven't seen anything with regard to it except saying, that you're applying for some kind of open space grant for $5,000 fee.
Right, you'd be applying for a grant to do one of three things or all three, depending on what you fund. You're going to ask Open Space to fund the dog park, a new playground that will be handicap accessible, and a pavilion to shield people in weather conditions or sun or rain or lightning or whatever.
And what's the cost for the borough?
The grant application is $5,000. You'd be applying for upwards of $500,000 in funding.
And is there a matching fund to it? Is it just a free grant?
Nope, all county grants are always matching. So whatever they give you, you have to match.
So it's a $1 for dollar match.
Usually, sometimes it's not, but usually it is.
Well, what is this one?
I don't know. You won't know until you have to apply, and then depending on the funding available, the county open space meets. They make a determination of what money is available. They make a determination for each town what they're going to fund, and then they basically offer to you what they're going to give you. Sometimes it's a 1-for-1 match. Sometimes it's not. You won't know until you apply. It's going to be at least.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding the playground, the dog park. I'm not sure if other towns have used this model, but I'd like to form a committee. I'd like public input as to specifically what playground equipment we're going to have. I've seen towns where they put the ugliest playground equipment in that is cheap looking. So do you know of any other towns that have opened a committee and have had community input and discussions about the type of improvements that will be taking
We-
place through the
We
grant.
did create a committee, Mr. Di Gregorio. Mr. Katrubis heads that committee, been working with Mr. Hippolyte, and I think there will be public hearings. Mr. Katrubis, is that correct?
Yeah, we offered for you to be on that committee, David, but you steadfastly declined, so, and we will
Well,
be,
I would
What
like,
committee is that?
the committee to put in a plan for the ballpark.
Yeah, but I don't recall ever there being any committee for that. When was that? When did we form that committee and when was it approved?
January,
I want to say that it was done in December.
December? Okay. As early-
Okay, well, it's
We were
like Mayor,
both-
as you know, all committees that are formed in the prior year have to be reformed. And I don't believe that was in your reformed committees at the beginning of the year, so that's why I asked.
I don't recall when it was formed, David. You may be, I'm sorry, Glenn, you may be right. I know that you and David were both offered to participate in it. You both declined.
Yes, and that, what you're referring to at that point was a committee being formulated last year. Mr. Mensch, please give your opinion, because I know that I'm 100% right, that committees that are formed in a prior year need to be reformed and approved after the reorganization meeting, and that hasn't been done.
Do you recall if it's a ad hoc committee, Mr. Munch?
It was an ad hoc committee. It wasn't a standing committee, like your rec board, your board.
All right, so if it's an ad hoc committee, then I'm reforming it right now. How's that? Okay, and Mr.
I would like
DiGregorio,
to
Mr.
invite the
Luciano-
public to
Mr.
participate.
DiGregorio, Mr. Luciano, you didn't want to be on it, and yes, the public will participate. And Mr.
I think
Katrubis told you
the
that.
committee should have public members on it, and we
The
should
committee
have.
did have a
a
public
forum.
member on it.
Who?
Mr. Heyman Meadow was on that committee as well.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to, we've kind of got distracted from where we are.
We always
If you don't
do.
apply- If you don't apply for a grant, you can't form a committee, or a committee can't review and have public input on what you're putting in because you don't have any money to do it. Tonight, you specifically just decide whether you want to apply for the grant or not. If you choose not to apply for the grant tonight, you will receive no money from the county, which the county gives money to everybody. So if you have to apply for the grant and receive it, then you can have your committee look at it. I just,
Okay, and that's a resolution by vote?
yes.
Okay. Mr. Mensch, is that, I don't see it on my agenda. I don't know if I have an older version.
Yeah, I don't see it on mine either.
No, sorry, hold on.
Oh, is it the open space, the 22 dash?
That's the open, yeah, 20,
Yes.
22 dash
76, okay. Yeah, so we have it there, and Andy will more than likely pass that tonight and move forward.
Okay, great.
Thanks for all your great work. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy.
All right, guys, good night.
Bye, Andy. Good night.
Okay, so that's 22.
Okay, then next on the agenda was bench installation. Does anybody want to speak to bench installation? I know there's a request to have a bench in memory of a parent who passed away, a longtime resident, and I'm not sure if that's the bench that we're talking about here.
Laura, can you give us some information on it, please?
Laura, you're muted.
The letter is from Ellen Silberman, a resident. Her
Okay, thank
father, Dr. Leon Barahia, passed away. And
Okay.
it would be an honor for her mom, Florence, who has been living in Englewood Cliff for 66 years, and they were married for 74 years. So
Okay, thank you.
she wants a bench in memory.
Yeah, so that was the same bench that I was mentioning. And I would definitely support this. I support benches, and, we put benches around town, and I see people using them on Floyd and elsewhere on Johnson. I think it's a good thing, and the more benches, the better. So is this going to be a vote, Mr. Mensch?
If the council would like to move forward with it, then they certainly can make a motion to do so.
Okay, so should we do that now, or should we put it later? I'd rather just do it now if possible.
There's nothing prohibiting you from doing that.
All right, so can I have a motion to have a bench installed as Ms. Borchers read into the record?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Yes.
Go
The
ahead.
budget. Is this been budgeted for, or what do we have to do to? What do we have to do for,
Ms. Borchers, was the resident paying for this or was the town paying for this?
Oh, she didn't mention anything? I was under the assumption it would be the town.
I thought I read that she was willing to pay for the bench. That's what I thought I read. I don't have it in front of me.
I think that's, I think that may have been the case. Let's assume that is the case. So we're just granting approval for a bench to be purchased by a resident in memory of her father, longtime resident. And the bench will be, you know, it has to be aesthetically acceptable to the town, which I'm sure it will be. If that's, and the resident will pay for it. If that's not the case, then we'll come back. But let's have a resolution.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. There have been commemorative objects placed on the park and then removed by Mario Kranjak. One of them being for Island Parker. If his commemorative stone was moved to a corner of the park, it should be moved back to its original place. Plus, the name of the mayor, the former mayor, should be replaced on the building. If the mayor can do that with those two benches, then he can.
You're confusing different concepts and you're being political. This is a bench in memory of, this is a bench in memory of a parent who died, being paid for by a resident getting approval.
What do you call those other things?
Rock. Mr. Plucker's commemorative stone was a rock, and the name on the building, these are separate issues, Mr. DiGregorio.
No, they're not. They're exactly the same.
This is a bench. It's actually functional. It's nice. People could use it.
You have desecrated.
Mr. DiGregorio, don't turn everything into a political.
No, I'm just
don't
respectfully
soil a
pointing this
nice
out.
thing that we're trying to do for a resident here.
I agree.
Don't soil it, okay?
And I agree that we should do this.
You can have Mr. Parisi's name. You can put it in front of your house if you want. You're welcome to do that if you believe.
Gentlemen, I just want to, I really just want to cut in here, okay? I really don't want any part of this discussion. And I think that we're breaching the line of being ashamed of ourselves, okay? So resident put in a request. Let's just honor it with a vote. There's been a motion and a second, and let's move on.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Please.
Councilman Farrow,
Yes.
Councilman DiGregorio,
Yes.
Councilman Luciano,
Aye.
Council President Katurbis.
Yes.
It passes.
Thank you. That wasn't so hard, Mr. DiGregorio, was it? The next up is the plaque installation. This is for Little League. This is a plaque to commemorate a championship team. I fully support this. And I would also support taking every politician's name off of every building at a park or a building anywhere and just having championship teams honored and their coaches and the players. All right, politicians, you could get your names put somewhere else.
This is for the, I have a question about this.
Yeah, Mr. Katrubis could answer those questions, I think, right?
Yeah, we also have, I spoke to Coach Billy about this. He had submitted the invoice, the invoice of the picture of the plaques, Glenn. We also have Mark Neville. We looked over the ball field, discussed on where they would be placed, and we wanted to have Mark's opinion. So he's here to answer any questions you may have as well, but feel free to ask whatever it is you need.
So we're going to install 8 plaques at a cost of over $9,000.
I think it's 11 plaques and it's close to $11,000.
Well, the information, with all due respect, that I have, that I'm looking at right in front of me, that was sent to me, was 8 plaques at $9,376. Hearing that it's $11,000 doesn't make me any happier. But I know that a couple of years ago, well, let me just start this. Is this going to be shared expense with the Little League?
So the Little League, as soon as they obtain permission from the council, is planning on raising funds to finance this thing on their own.
Oh, so they just want authorization. I'm sorry to interrupt you. They just want authorization to have them installed somewhere at their expense.
That's correct.
Oh, okay, that makes a difference. I'll stop questioning.
Well, at the very least, that's number one. But at the same time, I also took it upon myself to ask the borough administrator if there was any sort of funds available to help alleviate the cost for the parents. She had mentioned to me that there's an immediate funds of about $1,500 to $2,000. If I'm not mistaken, Jewel, I don't know if you're there, if you can correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Yeah, so I personally would like to see if we can, because they tried to do this a couple of years ago. I don't know why it fell through. The cost was about $6,000. Now, as you can see, it's close to double.
They've also had more championships, right? So a couple more plaques.
Oh, okay, see, I wasn't aware of that. But if there's anything that the council can do, but right now, their plan is they would like to they're just asking for permission.
Okay, then, yeah, I just had a question, because, okay, that's fine. Thank you.
I think we should also mention that there is actually a former Little League player from Englewood Cliffs who's pitching in the major leagues.
Yeah.
So it's a great program.
Mark, do you have anything that you want to add to this?
Just to be clear regarding Councilman Luciano's question, I believe Little League was looking to raise the money as discussed and purchase the plaques, submit them to the borough. And I was talking to Billy as well, and he asked me if I could help them install them. So public works staff would install them on the building, but they wouldn't be purchased by Little League. If that helps.
If you can explain to Mark where they would be installed.
We're looking to install them on the southwest corner of the building, which would be to the right of the large snack stand window. We go on the right side from the snack stand window to the corner of the building and around to the storage entrance.
Which teams are being honored?
On the plaque.
I believe, David, and you can't quote me on this, but it's ones that have reached state championships and obviously won state championships.
Okay, so we're going a few years back then, right?
I think as far back as 2003 or 2004 is the first team.
So,
Just if I may, Tim, just let them know that, not that it matters, but they only have like 5 or 6 of them here. And you're saying it's up to 11. I don't care if it's 11 or 40.
Yeah.
If they're gonna do it, I support it.
Well, I think the reason that you don't have it is because Billy had mentioned that he's waiting for photos from some of the older teams and he just hasn't been able to get them, and that's why you don't have
Okay, no problem.
But
Make a motion to accept that.
well, can we talk about perhaps even the 1,500 or the $2,000? Can we just add that to or should we separate it?
What is the $1,500 or $2,000?
It's just some funds that we have allocated to the budget, the temporary budget, that we would be able to help them help the parents alleviate the cost.
okay.
Well, with us still working on a temporary budget, why don't we just approve it for them to seek it, and then when we figure out our budget with the best that we can to help support them?
Okay, we could do that too. I'm okay with that.
Or why don't we find out how much the advertising fees are that they receive, and what our portion is, and then we can talk about it from there, because I'm not sure what that money is either.
Glenn, I didn't get anything you said because it was a huge echo.
Okay, that's right, I support it, don't worry.
Okay.
Right, Laura, did we had a motion in a second, or did we had no motion? yet?
No, we didn't.
I'll make the motion.
Have a second?
Second,
Have a
And
vote?
this is authorization for them to install.
yes,
Just to install, and then we'll talk about, funding at some point in the future.
Have
If
a
the
roll call,
council's
please.
interested.
Councilman Farrow,
yes,
Councilman Di Gregorio,
Yes,
Councilman Luciano,
Aye.
Councilman President Katurbis.
Yes.
Mayor, it passes.
Thank you. Next up is 22-773, payment of vouchers. The total is $3,567,534.45. Can I have a motion to approve that?
make a motion,
I'll second it.
Can I have a roll call?
Can we have discussion though? I just want to make sure that the certain bills are not included there. I haven't had an
Sure.
opportunity to look at them.
Yeah.
Matt,
They're there. You haven't looked at them, they're there.
Yeah, I would assume based on other discussions that you would want to remove any Bernstein bills and any Geist bills.
correct.
Okay, so let's, did you want to amend the motion?
You take a roll call?
Matt, do you want us to amend the motion?
Yeah, you should amend, and if there's any other bills, to your point, I assume there's no Cadwalader bills or Stone Magnini bills on there, but
Okay, so as amended, the motion is to pay the vouchers with the dollar amount that I mentioned minus any invoices relating to
Can I also
Bernstein.
ask a
or
question?
Geist. I'm
Please.
sorry, I'm speaking. Can I just finish my statement before you jump in?
You can.
Please, you really, I mean, it's kind of getting disgusting at this point with you. So it's the motion being amended, the dollar amount that I mentioned minus any bills relating to Bernstein or Geist.
And Cadwalader.
And Cadwalader and Stone and Magnini. Okay, so Mr. Farrow, will you remove that? Will you make that motion? Mr. Farrow?
I'll make a motion to remove the, are you asking to make a motion to remove the original?
No, I just making a motion to amend the original to remove those four firms.
Yes.
Sorry, I make the motion.
You have a second?
A second.
You have a roll call?
Councilman Farrow,
Yes.
Councilman Di Gregorio. Councilman Di
Abstain.
Gregorio. Councilman Luciano,
I abstain.
Councilman Katrubis.
Yes.
We have two yes and two abstain. Matt,
the
Two yes.
mayor,
you're two yes, two abstain.
2 yes, 2 abstain, so the mayor has to.
So Matt, just explain that to the public, because it still doesn't really make sense to me. If
Oh,
people abstain, they're not voting, but you're saying that they're like a no vote?
Correct, because under your bylaws and your ordinances, a motion only carries if it obtains a majority vote of those members present. We currently have 4 council present, therefore 2 votes is not a majority of those members present. So it's essentially a deadlocks.
And you consider that?
So Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt you
You
again.
consider that a tie, Mr. Mensch?
Yeah, it's not clear in terms of whether that would be a complete failure or not, but given the fact that they essentially act as no votes, it seems to me to make sense that the most logical way of handling that is as a tie.
All right, I'll break the tie.
Mr. Mensch,
I'll break the
Mr.
tie.
Mensch.
I'll vote yes.
can I ask a question, please?
It passes.
We were
Yes,
still
Mr.
voting,
Mensch.
Mr. Luciano, we're still voting, which means. that you
No, you're
can't-
not, because you just voted, and every time I go to talk, you'll tell me
No,
no,
and every time
or
you
wait, and
interrupt
never
me.
come back to me.
Well,
Okay,
there's
Mr.
nothing to
Mensch.
come back to. We had discussion. You've
And
discussed.
now I'm trying to ask a question
So
of
now,
Mr.
the way to
Mensch.
do this under Robert's rules is you approach me as the chairman of this meeting and you say,
How about I
point of
just do a
order.
point of order?
And I say no, and we move on.
No, you can't ignore a
We have
point of order.
I can because you didn't ask.
No,
for
you
it
cannot,
correctly.
Mr. Mensch, can he ignore a point of order?
You didn't ask for it correctly. Read your own.
What do I
Robert's
have to
rules.
say?
I'm not going to
Papa,
tell you how to do it
please?
the right way.
Go ahead.
Daddy, please, may I please have a point of order?
No, that's not the way you asked for it. So the consent
Mr. Mensch,
agenda next is
I'd like a
22
legal opinion.
74.
I would like a
22,
written legal
75.
opinion
Ms. Borchard, can you
about
move
the
Luciano?
two
He's interrupting.
abstentions, because it's of my opinion that it's two,
Go ahead, Ms. Borchard.
if they count
We
as
need to-
no's, I'm mute.
He
We-
moves, takes it off.
Someone better unmute me, I'll tell you
we
right
just-
now.
We just went through this, Mr. Luciano.
I'm
To speak to
asking
Mr. Mensch
our
offline.
attorney
We need to get through
us
the
a
agenda.
written opinion on how the two abstentions work, because I have the opinion that two abstentions doesn't trigger the mayor to break a tie.
I
It's
just
not a
asked and he
tie.
said I did, so there you
It's
have
not,
it.
no, too bad. That's why I want to mute.
Councilman.
That's fine. We're not going to spend all night on this. Mr. Mensch, can you address this
Please.
with him tomorrow, please? It's not
No,
going
I'm
to change
asking
anything
right
tonight.
now, in public, on the record.
You just
to
asked
get a
for it.
legal
Fine.
opinion.
Fine, you're done. You asked for it. This is not an hour conversation. He just explained it to
Mitch.
everyone if you were listening, and he'll
Mr.
write it out for
Mitch,
you separately.
If we leave the meeting.
You don't have, Mr. Di Gregorio, you don't have the
Would
floor.
that be a quorum?
Mr. Di Gregorio, you don't have the
Would they have a
floor.
quorum?
Yes,
Yes?
yes. The meeting started with
You
a
don't have
quorum.
the floor.
You have
Okay.
currently 5 elected
All right,
officials.
let's go to the consent agenda, 22-70.
Well, how would that work with a vote?
22-75.
With two people absent.
22-76.
Does that mean the mayor breaks the tie?
22-77 and 22-78.
Okay, so we'll just
Can I
vote
have a
present
motion?
from now on.
Move those by consent.
I make the motion.
Can I have a second?
Second,
Discussion? Could I roll call, please?
Councilman Farrow,
yes?
Councilman Di Gregorio,
Who's present?
Present.
I vote yes or no.
He's voting present just like I am.
It's basically they're not voting. It's a
There you go.
non-vote.
Council President Katurbis.
Yes.
Again, Mayor, it's 2-2.
Well, no, it's two and two no votes.
But you said two
So
no,
There is no
yes.
breaking of a tie.
I vote yes, there's a tie, correct, Mr. Mensch?
Mr. Mensch,
Gentlemen, I've given you my opinion as we sit here now, that I believe the 2 no votes, the 2 abstentions or present votes should be treated as essentially no votes, which is how they operate. Therefore,
Okay, thank you.
to be able to vote.
Okay.
I
So
will
what-
provide
what's-
a full opinion, and if that's wrong, then we'll address it. I don't-
What's interesting about this is that Mr. Di Gregorio and Mr. Luciano want to just tie up the borough, not have any business transacted, including a temporary budget, an open space grant application. This is what it all comes down to, right? A grant application for accepting a grant for the senior citizens. Because politics comes first, doesn't it, Mr. Luciano, Mr. Di Gregorio? Not doing your actual jobs, but the politics of it all, right? You guys disgraced yourself again. Okay?
you're the biggest disgrace. to the
Let's
whole
have
municipality.
22-02.
Don't tell me
Adoption
about
of
being a
ordinances.
disgrace.
Adoption of ordinance. The first one is a Spectrum franchise renewal. This is for public, so I need a motion to open to the public just on this matter. Can I have a motion, please? Can I have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
aye,
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, no opposition. So this is to award the Spectrum franchise. It's a renewal. It was introduced and now it's being voted on tonight and authorized. So if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak just on this matter, 22-02, please raise your hand and we'll recognize you. Okay, there's no one wishing to speak. I see on this matter. Can I have a motion to close the public portion?
Make a
motion to close,
Can I have a
Second.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
aye,
Anyone opposed? Okay, can I have a motion to approve 22-02 Spectrum franchise renewal?
Make the motion.
second,
Can I have a roll call?
Councilman Farrow,
yes?
Councilman Di Gregorio,
No.
Councilman Luciano,
Abstained.
Councilman Katurbis.
Yes. Gentlemen, I just need to know, what's your objection to this ordinance? I mean, if you have a valid objection, you should let us know so we can fix it.
I have nothing more to say on it.
You just don't want people to have cable television or internet?
I just don't want you to have it.
Mayor,
If I don't have it, the town doesn't have it. right?
Matt, you wanna chime in here a little bit, or?
no, I was just gonna suggest, just for the sake of, because there's been questions or issues raised, Mayor, I would just suggest that you vote on this matter. There's been 1 no, 1 abstention. So, I would suggest that you vote on it. That way, if there's any.
You have 2 yeses, Matt.
I have 2 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention.
Correct. So, given the fact that Mr. Luciano has raised a question about whether abstentions as no votes.
Oh, I
And
see. Okay, so I'll vote yes.
so,
To the extent that counts, I'll vote yes.
Passes.
I can look at it, we covered.
Okay, we have to save the cable TV and internet for the town, even though Mr. Di Gregorio and Mr. Luciano don't want people to have that. I guess it's because they don't want people to have information. Okay, so next up, I know 2203 and 2204 were amended heavily, so.
Correct. So let me just give a couple brief comments, if I may. These were ordinances that were introduced at the last meeting. They've been advertised. Since that time, Councilman Katrubis and Councilman Luciano met with Greg Fehrenbach and made some amendments to those, suggested amendments to these ordinances. Those amendments would be too substantive for the council to simply adopt the ordinances since they've been already advertised in a format. So if the council would like to move forward with the amended version that Mr. Katrubis and Councilman Luciano have proposed, and the steps that the council want to take voting down resolutions tonight. I'm sorry, they proposed because you don't want to be in that format, and to introduce the versions that contain the amendments that Councilman Luciano had proposed. That's the way that the council would want to proceed, assuming they want to move forward with the ordinances overall, and assuming that they want to move forward with the subsequently amended versions.
Okay. So before we even do anything, what I want to say here is that, taking power away from elected officials, myself and the council itself here, and handing them over to employees of the borough is really something that I find abhorrent, because the whole country has gone in this direction, right? It doesn't matter who gets elected, because the bureaucrats, the deep state, the administrative state is actually running all levels of local, county, state, and federal government. And I don't know why elected officials go along with this, because it takes power away from them, and they were the ones who were elected. Myself and the council, we're the ones who are elected to lead. The administrators are not the elected officials. They don't have the same skin in the game like we do. And we were meant to have that skin in the game. And here it's a little bit even more abhorrent, because the consultant that the town had hired is actually advising this council to take power away from itself and hand it over to an administrator that actually works for that consultant. So it's a democracy problem here. You don't need this. And there needs to be a separation between the elected officials and the employees of a town, of a government, because the employees answer to those elected officials, because we answer to the people. And it works really well that way. When it doesn't work is when there's too much power in the administrative state. And that's what this is trending to. And of course your consultant wanted you to do this, because it's his own employee who benefits, and he benefits, right? And so I'm against this, and I don't even think it's lawful to do what's being done here, because New Jersey law codifies the authority of a council and of a mayor, and it's just foolhardy for a council to take power away from itself, right? What are you guys thinking? Anyway, that's my point on it.
So what are we tabling the administrator one and going forward with the mayor one?
Well, so no, I think there's two issues. So let's talk about the mayor one first, if I may just separate them out. And they work in tandem, but they are two separate ordinances. The proposed revision, Councilman, that that was discussed by you and Councilman Katrubis, the change from what's being proposed, that was proposed last meeting, to what's being proposed as an alternative would be to remove the language that says the mayor shall supervise the conduct and all acts of officers in the borough. To strike that language. So instead it would simply read, the mayor shall execute all contracts made on behalf of the council. The issue there from a legal standpoint is that under the borough form of government, the statute indicates that, the governing body as a whole, mayor and council, supervise employees. In your own borough code, you had designated some of that power to the office of the mayor. And there was a discussion about whether or not you wanted to strike that language and generally keep all officers reporting to the governing body as a whole. So that's the language that's that was discussed to amend in the mayor, the ordinance amending the section titled powers to the mayor. That is a substantive enough change that if you wanted to move forward with that, then you should table should vote no, because you're not going to table it. You're going to, I guess you can amend it. So you should amend the ordinance that's being proposed to strike that language, republish it, and then you could have that discussion at the next meeting. That's the change between the introduced version and the one being proposed that was discussed. On the administrator, there's more proposed changes, and I can walk the council through them if you want me to do that.
So just so we're clear, the first ordinance for the powers of the mayor, those powers are being shifted from the mayor to the council?
Being shifted from the mayor to the mayor and council. It's tracking the language of the statute, which basically says all employees report to the mayor and council unless the council otherwise designates.
Yeah, but then there's an inconsistency in the next ordinance, which is that it renders all our committees meaningless because, say, for example, the public safety, which is the police committee, the chairman of that committee would not be permitted to speak directly with the chief of police. He or she would have to speak to the administrator first and have the administrator speak to the police chief. We have a administrator right now who's only at the office 2 or 3 times a week, temporary. And, when the police chief has something going on the weekend and needs to talk to me or to the police chairperson, what's he going to do? Is he going to go track down the administrator and then have the administrator call me to not be in violation of this ordinance? So you see what you're doing here, because it's politically motivated, but you're shooting yourselves in the foot because you may think you're getting one over on the mayor, and it's not going to stop me, guys. I do whatever I'm going to do anyway, and just to get my jobs done properly for this borough. But you're not going to be able to do your jobs either. Let me finish. You're not going to be able to do your jobs. You won't be able to speak directly to Mr. Neville if you're on the recreation committee or on the committee for the park. You won't be able to speak to the police chief, right? It's a problem. It makes no sense. Think about what you're doing.
Is this true, Matt?
No, I don't read it that way.
Look, yeah, it does. Look,
but
Matt, that's what it says. You wrote it.
So if we go through, we're talking now, Mayor, you're talking about the borough administrator ordinance, correct?
Sure.
Okay. So we can go through the proposed changes. And the goal here overall, which by the way, is a policy decision of council. This is, this is the...
Matt, I'm sorry, Matt, I just want to correct you right on the spot because this is garbage, right? And this is what's hurting the council as well. Except for the purpose of inquiry, the mayor and council and its members shall deal with the administrative service solely through the borough administrator. And neither the mayor and council nor any member thereof shall give orders to any subordinates of the borough administrator, either publicly or privately. We're basically precluded from doing our jobs that we have a sworn oath to do because Matt Mensch got together with a consultant to basically take the power away from the elected officials, which he wouldn't do in his own town, but he's doing it here. and it's insane what you're doing.
Mayor, you can try to.
So the council, before you go along with this nonsense, actually take 5 minutes and read what you're giving up here. This is the problem today with America. All the elected officials have turned over their rights to the administrative state.
Just so the public's aware, this has nothing to do with Mr. Mensch.
You're right.
This has to do with the mayor's behavior for the past 6 years and how he's treated.
No,
the
actually, you're
council
wrong, Mr.
members
Luciano. This is
and
about,
the
these are my rights.
employees
This is from the
of the
ordinance that
borough.
affects you.
That's the
This
reason
is from the
why
ordinance that affects you,
the
Mr.
mayor
Luciano.
thought he controlled
We
the
gave it to you to
agenda.
read.
The mayor
I can't make
controlled
you
who
read.
was hired and fired. The mayor was just God.
I don't hire
in
and fire,
Englewood
sir.
Cliffs,
That's
and
the
it has nothing
council.
to do with Mr. Mensch. This is what the council requested to be done. So don't
So
blame it on
you're
Mr.
doubling
Mensch,
down
but
on
blame
stupidity.
it on your
then.
own people that can't stand the way you run things.
You're doubling down on your own stupidity, which I find great. That really never works out for anyone.
Let me
Mr.
just jump in.
Katurbis, I think
Let
you
me
need to
just jump
read this.
in, Mario, in Matt's defense. He just drew up the document. He didn't get together with GMA. GMA had proposed this to the council because of the constraints that we're having in terms of hiring people. And this is something that they recommended is what's part of the industry standard. And if it's not there, he was basically, Greg was telling us that we're going to have a great deal of difficulty in recruiting competition, talent.
Well, I don't think that, Mr. Katurbis, you may have a point about recruiting, but you know there's someone who wants that job right now who doesn't care about any of this, right? So why would you take power away from yourself to do that, right?
Listen, you make a valid point, right? I hear what you're saying.
What is that valid point? And who wants that position? Because we
No,
are having a hard
listen,
time
gentlemen,
finding
I think that this conversation needs to be taken offline.
Oh, really?
Glenn, this conversation should be taken offline.
Well, I
It
find
should
it
be had in
interesting
closed
that you
sessions.
know that
I agree with
someone
you.
right now wants the position. I was just curious.
Tim, I agree with you.
We're all on council, we have the same information. It's just, we should be having this conversation in closed session.
I make a motion to table this, both of them.
I'll second that motion.
All right, can I have a roll call on tabling?
Councilman Farrow,
Yes.
Councilman Di Gregorio,
He's muted.
he has to unmute himself.
He muted himself.
Yes. Table it.
Councilman, did you say yes?
Table.
Table? Okay. Councilman Luciano,
Aye.
Council President Katurbis.
Yes, table it.
Okay, next up is adjournment.
Mayor, before you adjourn, with the consent agenda, I do not recall, did we pass that? Did you?
I voted yes in case it's deemed
Okay.
a tie. So it was 3 yeses, a no, and an abstention at the end of
All
the
right,
day.
thank you.
I have a question. Mr. Mensch, last week when you weren't here, and I believe even in previous opinions that were raised, so last week, and I'd like to get a legal opinion from you as well with regard to this. If a council member has a conflict or doesn't have a conflict, who makes that decision?
Well,
Is it the council person themselves? Because they're the one who's going to be held responsible. Or does the mayor or the acting borough attorney on that day make that decision that a council member has a conflict and then elects to put them out of a closed session meeting because they feel they have a conflict?
Councilman, and I'm happy to have this discussion, with you, longer, one-on-one, to the extent you want to. I think the answer to your question generically here is it depends on the nature of the conflict. And in an instance where, let's just say hypothetically, a councilman has a conflict because they have litigation against the borough. Well, in that instance, the conflict is not just a matter of a councilman's personal conflict. It's a conflict that the borough can't conduct the business because they're adverse to that council member. in certain instances, it could expand because now we're not talking about there's other actions which are directly related, which creates other difficulties because it's not a matter of just, hey, we're concerned about a councilman who might have a wife who works for a spouse who works for a business. And there's a question about whether that's going to cause an ethical conflict for the councilman. When we're dealing with litigation that puts a councilman in direct conflict with the borough has to be able to conduct business, including discussion and litigation, without that conflict. So that's a generic, more general answer to your question without getting into the details of it. It's a very difficult situation to figure out how to respond to, but I do think there's an issue with borough has to be able to have litigation discussions about strategy, and in some instances, cases are not directly related. There's interrelation between cases, and the borough has a right to have litigation discussions without having to worry about litigation strategy being disseminated to adverse parties. And I'm happy to talk about that further to the extent you want me to.
You got it. Thank you, sir.
So actually, the example there is Luciano Di Gregorio sue the town. Although they know they can't vote on anything affecting that litigation, they were refusing to actually leave the closed session that we could actually have a private conversation about what the town has to do to defend itself against Luciano Di Gregorio and their lawyer Wunsch. And for whatever reason, Mr. Luciano brings this up just about every hour and can't seem to understand why he should not be permitted in there in that meeting to understand what our strategy is. So either he's just being a hardhead about it, or there's some cognitive decline there that we can't figure out. But with that said, I would just like to have a motion to adjourn.
That's always good to.
Make a motion.
I get to reply.
I make a
I get
motion to
reply
adjourn.
when you're going to say something like that. First,
Second, all in favor?
I'm good.
All right, we're
Tim,
adjourned.
you did that?
Thank you.
This is why we need to.
We're adjourned. Lori, you can end the meeting. Good night, everybody. Take care.
See, there's no